So hello and welcome to this Introduction to Access to Work webinar. This is a session for anyone who is interested in applying for access to work, wants a bit more information about that, and in particular for anyone who is neurodivergent. So that's people who have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, any of the neurodivergent conditions that make up neurodivergence. Essentially, just to get started, who am I? My name is Leah, and I am just a regular person who has gone through the Access to Work grant process myself because I am autistic and have ADHD, and I run a small charity. And I've just completed my training to become an ADHD coach and have done a bunch of reading and research around neurodivergence. And after my own experience, I wanted to help other people access to work because it took me a lot of research and a lot of spoons to be able to gather together the information and get through the process. And I just wanted to bring the concept of peer support to what's out there at the moment in terms of information about access to work. So I decided to set up a new community initiative, which I've called Divergent. And the intention of this community initiative is to provide peer support peer-to-peer to other neurodivergent people. And as the first activity we're looking at access to work, but I hope that in time we could also support people through the waiting list diagnosis process or any other kind of process that might be applicable. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And essentially, Access to Work is a government grant to support people to get or stay in work. It's called Access to Work, but it's more kind of access to stay in work, to make work more accessible. And it provides up to £66,000 per year per person of tailored support. This support is not means tested, so it doesn't matter what your salary is, how much you earn. You just have to be employed, including being self-employed. There is an element where if you work for a large organization, then your company would be expected to contribute a percentage of the equipment or software costs if you're awarded any of those. But that percentage doesn't apply to things like support workers. So having a virtual assistant or having an ADHD coach or something like that, your employer wouldn't have to contribute. Obviously, hopefully, if you're watching this, your employer is a good employer and would support you, but obviously that is, unfortunately, it's not a legal requirement that employers go along with access to work. And it does mean that you have to tell your employer, which you might not have already done. So that's something to think about as well. You can't apply for access to work without your employer knowing. They don't really have to do much in the application, but they will be informed that you've applied, and they will be responsible for some of the kind of payment processing once you're awarded something. So they don't get any confidential information that you share during the process, the details or anything, but they will be part of the process. And hi, welcome to someone who's just joined. I've just basically gotten started talking through what is access to work. So are you eligible is the first thing to think about. And the eligibility is pretty broad. Essentially, you just have to be over the age of 16 and either currently in employment or about to become employed. So if you have been given an offer of a job, for example, then that counts. And a job can include self-employment, but it can't include a work placement, a voluntary work placement or a volunteer role. It has to be paid employment. It can be part or full-time. And in terms of your condition, so thinking about whether you have ADHD or autistic or have dyslexia, you just have to be able to describe how that affects you at work, but you do not need to have a formal diagnosis, which is a really good thing because the waiting lists in the UK are horrific. And so the good news is that you do not need a diagnosis to apply. You don't need to wait. If you're on a waiting list, you don't need to wait to ask for access to work support. And I've to kind of emphasize that this is a screenshot from the Access to Work website where it says in their own writing, you do not need to be diagnosed to apply. So how you get it is to fill out a really annoying form. It's very un-ADHD friendly. Sorry to have to share that bit of it with you, but it is just one form once, and it is worth getting through. The application did change towards the end of last year. So if you see any other guidance around online, just check that it's been updated since then, because unfortunately they did make it slightly more complicated than it used to be. So if you're going on someone who's experienced, so I applied in September and it's changed since then. But I've been through the new form, so I can understand what's in there. I didn't update my slides. There is another session. It's not on the 23rd of February to do body doubling. I'll look it up. It's later this month. But essentially, Divergent, the organization that's running this, which is essentially me and just trying to help other people, in addition to these info sessions, we're doing body doubling sessions where essentially we get together and do it together. So if that's something that would help you to have a date in the calendar and someone talking through just to get the application done, I will send you an email after the session to give you a link for how to do that. There is also a free e-learning that an organization called ADHD Works has. So if you don't want to wait until the body doubling session and you just want to get it done, you can go and sign up to that. That's completely free on their website, and that also provides you all the information in a kind of walkthrough of what you need to know. So if you're able to do that, then do go ahead. Essentially, all you need to apply is to have a bit of information about your employment. So it'll ask you, your start date and your job title, that kind of stuff. And you'll also need to be able to describe how your condition impacts you at work. And you are asked what you want in terms of support, but you can say, I don't know. So I'll come through to that in a moment. So the sorts of things that might impact you at work could include, for example, challenges with administration, keeping organized, remembering things, with your spelling and grammar, in terms of your communication with coworkers. It could make you more prone to burnout or overwhelm. It's essentially, anything that impacts you at work that makes work more difficult, more challenging, makes work more draining or difficult for you. It could be things that you've had feedback around, or tension points in the workplace. So anything you're experiencing, that's what they want to hear about in terms of the challenges you experience. And then the sorts of things that they can provide. This is just a really headline list, really. So they can provide specialist equipment. So on the screen here are just some examples of things that other neurodivergent people have found helpful. So that could be a sit-stand desk, a cross-legged chair, or a wobble stool. It could be things like noise-canceling headphones, specialist keyboards. It can also be software. So there's software that helps you with spelling and grammar if you are dyslexic. There's software that helps you with mind mapping tools if you're more of a visual thinker. There are tools to help with note-taking and kind of AI note-taking services so that you don't have to remember what's said in certain meetings, or it can give you action points after meetings. So all of those things can be covered, as can support workers. So you can get coaching. There's something called ADHD coaching, which is a specialist form of coaching that helps people with executive functioning skills. You can get a coach for autism as well. You can get a virtual assistant or a support worker. Often this is to help with administrative tasks, but it also could be to help with relationship challenges that you face. You can get funding to pay for training for your manager or for your entire workplace. Funding for body doubling. You can also, I haven't put this on there, I recently found out you can get help with decluttering if your workplace is quite cluttered, you have struggle with paperwork. So any of those things where you need another person to help you, you can get support with. And then there are also other sections of the application where you can get request support for traveling to work if you're unable to use public transport. So often this is because of another condition, a physical condition, but it could also apply, for example, if you have anxiety or really struggle in social situations. If you're able to articulate that you cannot use public transport, it's possible that you could be awarded support for traveling to work through taxis or something like that. It's possible. There is a mental health support service offered as part of Access to Work that gives you 9 months of monthly check-ins. It's not with someone who's trained in ADHD or autism or any other neurodivergence, but if you're experiencing anxiety or depression and it would be useful to have a monthly check-in with someone and some tools around that, that is something else you can get. And if you have other physical conditions alongside your neurodivergence that require physical aids or adaptations, there's a section in the application form for that as well. So how do you know what to ask for? Essentially, it's about doing a mixture of knowing what's out there, doing some research, and doing some self-reflection. So understanding what is going to help you with the challenges that you experience. So in the Access to Work application, they really want to see you pair up. Okay, this is a thing that is difficult for me, and I'm asking for this thing, and this is the thing it's going to help me with. So making that link for them. If you just say, I want a this kind of chair, but you can't explain how it'll help you, then they'll probably say, we don't see how that's going to help you. But if, for example, so I was awarded a chair that I can sit cross-legged on and I can change my seating position. And for me, I was awarded that because I'm quite restless as someone with ADHD. I get up and like to vary my position quite a lot. And without the chair, I was often getting up and wandering around my house and getting really distracted. So having the chair means I'm able to vary my seating position and I'm more likely to end up kind of staying in my workplace while I'm working, which is really useful for me. So that's an example of how you need to tie the challenge you face with the item that you want. I think it's also really helpful to hear from others about what to ask for. So that's what I did essentially. I did a lot of searching in Facebook forums and Reddit, which were really useful sources of information. And I'm hoping to set up a show and tell series as part of Divergent to be able to have sessions on different types of supports that other people have received. So that's something that's in the works. But in the meantime, there's lots of information online. If you look for it, or if you know anyone else who's gotten Access to Work, you can ask them. And then you can ask, if you only know the challenges you're facing and you can't possibly think of what to ask for, then you can go through the whole form on Access to Work and say, I've got these challenges, but I don't know what would be useful for me. And then they will award you a workplace assessment. So it adds an additional step to the process. But if you don't know what to ask for, then it's really useful. If you do know what to ask for, then don't ask for this, because then it'll just add time. And it could be that you want something that they don't think of, and then you have to spend time negotiating that. But it's useful if you don't know what to ask for. A few final things to mention. Usually how it works is that either you, if you're self-employed, or your employer will have to pay for items and then be reimbursed by Access to Work, which usually takes a month, but can take longer than that. There's no guarantees. And sometimes some suppliers will charge Access to Work directly, so you're not out of pocket. Usually that's to do with the support services, like a virtual assistant might be able to invoice Access to Work directly rather than invoicing you, for example. So if you're looking for a supplier, it's worth asking them about their invoicing and thinking about, from a budgeting perspective, how you'll buy things and claim for them. Access to work are very difficult to contact by phone. It's more possible to contact them by email, but sometimes they can be difficult anyway. And you can request a change of circumstances once you get an award, but again, it sometimes can take extra steps, and it is not a user-friendly system. Finally, in terms of access to work and self-employment, if you're self-employed, then you will need to provide either a tax return or a business plan. This is just because they need to make sure that you're either have or intend to earn at least £6,000 a year, because at that threshold, that's what they consider enough self-employment to warrant being awarded the grant. You can get a free template for a business plan at the Prince's Trust on the link there, which is really useful. It doesn't have to be a really complicated thing. They just essentially want to see that you are likely to earn at least £6,000 over the next year, but you only need to do that if you're self-employed. If you're employed, then just knowing that you're employed is enough. Okay, so we'll move on to any questions that you may have, and I'll just stop the slides and the recording for that.